All right, the proposed 2018 budget allocates 567 billion naira to defense, including 145 billion naira for capital expenditure and 422.43 billion naira for salaries and overheads. Nigeria's military aims to acquire a number of new assets with its proposed 2018 budget, including small boats, tugs, and helicopters. Now, for the Nigerian Army, the budget would allocate 1 billion naira as a 40% down payment for the purchase of 3 AS-350 light utility helicopters at $2.8 million each. The Army also hopes to acquire 25 infantry patrol vehicles for 300 million naira. New items in the proposed 2018 budget for the Nigerian Navy include 18 million naira or $50,000 for the procurement of 4 whaler boats and 481 million naira or $1.3 million for the procurement of 2 tugboats. But once again, it looks like we are bogged down with the overhead costs. Joining us to discuss our defense budget and the analysis is Kabiru Adamu. He is a security consultant. You're welcome to the program.
Thank you.
And talking about security, of course, recall that the president recently paid for some jet fighters to the United States. And yesterday, the National Assembly met with some service chiefs and asked them to submit some amount of money they will use to fund their different units in 2 weeks. But do you think that our security or defense is underfunded?
Given the comments by the heads of the various security services, one would tend to think that yes, security is underfunded. However, I think there is a big elephant in the room, which is corruption. Just like every other segment of the Nigerian society, one is bound to ask, is the little funds available to the security and defense sector, is it adequately being used? What is the procurement system that is in place? How transparent is that procurement system? Unfortunately, all of this has not been thoroughly looked at by especially the National Assembly, who is responsible in a democratic setting for both oversight and legislative function. As far as the security and defense sector is concerned, you just reeled out the various components of the 2018 budget as it affects the security sector and the defense industry. Now, what component of all of this would in the end result into a very transparent procurement process? I think that's where the challenge is. Over time, as far back as when we were under a military dictatorship, this is the major challenge that I think both the budget as well as the implementation of that budget has suffered. And unfortunately, I haven't seen an improvement even in the current 8th Assembly.
All right. The irony is when you think about the way we keep talking about a record budget year in and year out, 9.1 trillion naira, and then you run back through the years and you do the conversion in dollars, you suddenly realize that the monies for defense not exactly as high as we think. Perhaps you have to go back to the 1970s where we spent a lot in terms of defense. So on that background, tell me what you think. A number of people have argued that the size of the Nigerian army, for example, the way it is today, we're not spending enough still. Where do you side on this argument?
All we need to do is to look at the multiplicity of security challenges that is affecting Nigeria. And then I think it won't be difficult to answer the question that either the funds have not been enough or they have not been appropriately channeled to where they are supposed to be. As at today, the military in particular is deployed in almost 32 states out of the 36 states of Nigeria, undergoing one or the other form of exercise or operation. If you look at the nature of the deployment, you would see how widespread the military is deployed. Now, there are several challenges with that. What kind of platform does the military currently have to allow for this spread in deployment? both in terms of assets, in terms of communication, and then the most important one that people don't seem to appreciate, the training that the military in particular should have. Now, cascade that to all the other elements of, within the security department, and then you would begin to appreciate perhaps the requirement for funding, and then why, unfortunately, we're not getting results for the kind of spending that we've been spending in budget. No doubt, for the past, I think, almost a decade, security has been receiving the largest chunk of appropriation within our budget. But how has that translated into an improvement in security? I think that's perhaps where the discussion, and unfortunately, given the multiplicity of challenges that we currently have, the answer is clear that unfortunately either the funding is not enough or it's not being properly directed to solving the problem. What we see from our standpoint as analysts is more of a knee-jerk response to issues. So along the road, the presidency all of a sudden decides that funding is not enough, and then they go to the ECA and $1 billion is provided for funding a particular intervention within the security sector, or in some instances like the purchase of the Tucano airplanes. Monies are appropriated ahead of their approval by the National Assembly. So that type of knee-jerk approach has been, unfortunately, the nuanced intervention by the presidency, and I think that is why we're where we are. There is no holistic approach in budgeting for security as a whole.
Nigeria ranks 57 in a global rating on military expenditure. With it occupies the 7th position in Africa, while it is regarded as the largest spender in the West African sub-region. Now, isn't this a paradox that the more the government spends on security, the more insecure Nigerians feel?
Yes, it's a huge paradox, and honestly, it's not difficult to figure out why. In other climes, the transparency with which the procurement process, as well as even the budgeting process itself, is pursued is much more higher. Several organizations, including Transparency International, as well as Budget in Nigeria, have raised this point. We are not seeing the government responding to that challenge adequately, and this is clearly, I think, a responsibility of the National Assembly. The various committees that that have oversight functions over the security department need to enhance their capacity for both legislative as well as oversight capacity, so that the procurement processes of this department would be more transparent. And that is when, even if it's just ₦1 billion, for instance, that is appropriated for that, then Nigerians would be able to say, okay, this was the procurement process that was followed. Not too long ago, one of the local media agencies published some, I would say, damning allegations are revolving around the procurement process in Nigeria. I haven't seen any response by either the Ministry of Defense or any of the other security agencies. The Office of the National Security Advisor was specifically singled out in that accusation, even though it's not the current National Security Advisor. But that type of perception, that type of system where the procurement process is opaque, and most observers believe it's not transparent, it's not meeting the objective, I think it needs to be improved. No matter the amount of money that is voted for security, as long as that procurement process is faulty, then that's we'll continue having the situation we're having, where insecurity is increasing, and we're not seeing adequate response by the security forces.
We're facing a dilemma here. A similar situation Africa powerhouse South Africa is also facing too. The levels of overhead cost and recurrent expenditure. We're closer to 90% than we are to 80% in this year's budget. Something's been going on for a number of years. Is it something for us to be concerned about how much we're throwing into overhead cost and recurrent expenditure?
Yes, it is. Unfortunately, it's not going to get any better. The common perception is that all the security forces are stretched. We need to ask ourselves, how many soldiers, for instance, do we have? How many police do we have? And the common, I would say, request by virtually everybody is to have an increase in this number. And I know that the current government is working towards that. How much of that will be implemented within the 2018 budget and subsequent years, we don't know. But clearly, there's going to be an increase in overhead as well as recurrent expenditure. But I think the dilemma is what component of revenue is the security departments adding to the budget in terms of income. We have a hugely import-dependent security sector. Even the few industries that we have that are supposed to be productive are not as productive as they should be. So I think that's perhaps one area from a strategic point of view that Nigeria needs to look closely at. How do we enhance the capacity and of this departments or these firms within locally within the Nigerian security industry to produce and sell whatever it is, uniforms, gears, kits that are used by these organizations. How much of this is being bought locally? These are the ways I think that we can seek a balance in terms of the expenditure and as well as the income that these various departments. I'm not hearing that language currently, both from the National Assembly and then from the executive arm of government. That's the point I was trying to make earlier, and when I said I see more of a knee-jerk approach to the way we go about responding to budgetary requirements, and then of course even the implementation of the budget. If we would lay a claim to having the biggest or the best military in the sub-region, then these are the areas that I think we need to look at closely and then ensure that in the coming years we improve upon.
All right, we've been told that details of expenditures of the Nigeria defense budgets are not advisable to be disclosed. Now we know that we have insurgents in our hands, but would you consider that Nigeria is at war? Because a lot of people are saying the monies pumped into security is just so alarming. So would you say we are at war? The reason why we spend so much on security, or the much we have spent so far on security, is on the high?
It's neither here nor there. You spend to achieve results. Now, where you spend and the results are not visible, then it's easy to conclude that either your spending is misdirected, or your spending is not appropriate for the circumstances that you found yourself. So, in simple terms, I think that we need to look closely at firstly the budget formulation process. How much of the current circumstances that we have on ground, the interpretation of that circumstances and the requirements of the various organizations within the security sector goes into the budget formulation process. And then more importantly, once the formulation has taken place, how much of the requirement is laid out in a transparent manner that meets the needs of the various organizations. All you need to do is speak to especially the lower ranks of all the various government departments, and then you know that we don't have it, we are not yet there. The big elephant in the room, like I mentioned earlier on, corruption is always there, unfortunately, and I haven't seen much that is being done to enhance or to limit or even to eliminate corruption within the system. We are still talking about security vote. It's a part of the budget. How much of that process that has been made transparent? Most democratic settings, especially at the state level, see security vote as monies that they can use as and when they wish. So, bottom line, enhanced transparency within the process would determine whether the monies that are being appropriated are adequate or not. Under the current system, honestly, it's neither here nor there to reach a conclusion on that. As an analyst who looks into it, all I see is the end result, and the end result, unfortunately, tells me that insecurity is a huge challenge in Nigeria, and we need to improve on the budgetary system if we're going to, tackle insecurity.
All right, still a long way to go, especially in terms of what we saw with the last administration. The case is still in court. The former National Security Advisor, I guess when the verdicts start to come out, we have an idea of just how the scale of corruption was. But let's look ahead to sort of things the army, the military is trying to put in place to ensure we have a safer country. There's decreased spending for the armed forces. For the Army, they have increased the monies. For the Navy, they have, but for the Air Force, not so much money. I guess you can understand because of the Tucano jets. They probably will take care of new equipment for the Air Force. But in terms of investing in new equipment, what's your perception? You think we're on the right track, or we still have a long way to go?
Security has three components: the physical component, the systems, and then, of course, to an extent, what you call the human component. So no matter how much we spend on that physical component, the equipment, quote and unquote, if we do not improve on the system, how do you put together all of this equipment together to serve your need? How do you enhance the training of the people who are going to use this equipment? For me, that's the challenge. And then the fourth element that we need to speak about and improve upon is intelligence. I am not seeing enough discussion in that regard. Intelligence is the key to winning or losing any security situation that you have in your hand. What is the current level of intelligence gathering, intelligence analysis, intelligence dissemination in the country currently? It's honestly, for lack of a better word, I'll call it appalling. What is the kind of cooperation between the various intelligence departments? How many intelligence departments do we have? Roughly around 5. We have the Civil Intelligence Department with the DSS, the NIA, and then you have the military ones, the DIA, and then within the various arms of the military unit, the Navy, the Army, and the Air Force, they have their various intelligence units. What kind of fusion do we have among all of this? And then even bring it down to the lower level, the police, the Civil Defense Corps, and then the other civil security departments. Do we have a fusion of intelligence between them? That is not being tackled, both at the budgetary level and then in terms of even the day-to-day operations of this security department. And unless and until we do that, have all of these three components, or four that I mentioned earlier on, have a think tank that looks at them closely, and then to enhance both homeland security as well as the territorial security. Until we do that, then unfortunately, we're not, the provisions in the budget would still be, would come back here next year and be speaking about this, no matter the amount of money that is voted for in the budget.
All right, just before we let you go, you've talked about corruption and transparency, and just in line with what my colleague asked you just now, we've seen cases like Sambo Dasuki and some other military bigwigs who are currently on trial. And with an incident that played out last year in an IDP camp where these insurgents attacked an IDP camp that's close to a military base, it seemed that Nigerian military didn't have, sophisticated weapons, unlike the terrorists. Would you say that this money's being budgeted for the Nigerian defense this year is going to take care of the sophistication of the armory of our Nigerian military?
I personally believe that the Nigerian military has the weapons. I wouldn't go with the opinion that says the insurgents have better weaponry than the Nigerian military. No, of course you cannot compare a group of ragtag insurgents who lack the discipline and the tactical orientation of carrying out perhaps an ambush or an assault with an organized military. The challenge I feel, especially in the Northeast, is one of organization, and then what I've always mentioned, rapid response capabilities. In a modern warfare, especially one where you have the enemy within the civil society, rapid response capabilities is paramount. And in this budget and in previous budget, I haven't seen that type of changes within the Nigerian security architecture that would enhance and improve the capacity of our military, and not just the military, all the other security departments, for rapid response capability. And honestly, in a situation where the military is stretched, and in a situation where all the security departments unfortunately are operating in silos, that element, rapid response, would be the key to solving most of our problem. Is it the Dapchi incident where they operated for up to 2 hours and there was no response? Is it the attack that you cited as an example with, attacking an IDP camp? Name them. The solution to that is enhanced communication and then rapid response capability. The third element is enhancing the resilience of the local population where these security incidents happen. The word on everybody's lip right now is the situation in Birnin Gwari, which people read about it and you get the impression that perhaps there is no presence of law enforcement in those locations. The bandits block the highway. From between last week and this week, they've allegedly abducted more than 200 persons. And the question is asked, are there no security elements within those locations? The answer and the response I would give is that we lack rapid response capabilities. There is no communication facilities within the local population that they can immediately call, and then even if it's 2 a.m., that our military or the police can use whatever assets they have to deploy immediately and then tackle the problem there. So that's the kind of strategic thinking and response that I would expect to see in the 2018 budget, which unfortunately I'm not hearing, and in subsequent budget. Like I said at the beginning, what we have is a knee-jerk response. We need to see a better strategic response to the formulation and when the implementation of the budget.
All right, we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much, Kabiru Adamu, who is a security consultant. 2018 budget defense analysis we've been talking about. So,
thank you for having me.
All right. All right, so arrivals. Let's talk about sports. For the wrap, this one